So we are now recording and we are live. So happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to our 8th edition, our 8th episode of What Keeps You Up at Night, Entrepreneurship During Challenging Times. My name is Colin Weston. I am the community leader for Startup Vancouver, which is one of almost 50 chapters of Startup Canada across the country. And Startup Canada is the voice for the over 3 million entrepreneurs to support and connect them to the resources and to each other to give them the best chance for success upon their entrepreneurial endeavors. I am quickly going to share my screen here as I make some introductions with our guests, and you can see everybody's smiling face on there already today. But just hang on tight here for a second as I share that. Everybody can see that. Hey, it looks like I'm getting a little better at that. Usually I stumble through that and it takes me a couple of minutes to do it. So yeah, all right. Maybe I haven't quite got that down yet. Hold on. Hopefully everybody can see that screen there. I can't see it, I'm flying blind here. So Maryam, does that say hang in there, baby, like we have every month or every show? Yeah. Excellent. So we always start with this. How's everybody doing during these interesting times that we've all been part of for, gosh, almost 3 months now? So as we do on the show, we talk to amazing entrepreneurs and influencers within the innovation ecosystem. And we have 2 great guests on today that I'll introduce in a moment here. But we hope you're all doing well out there, that you're managing to stay connected, engaged, and energetic with all the things that you're doing with your friends and your family and the people that you work with. With Startup Vancouver, best place to find us is on social media, and we are very active on Twitter, on Facebook, Instagram, and also our LinkedIn page too. And we now have our freshly minted YouTube channel where you can go back and see all of our previous episodes. We have all 7 of them on there. So if you enjoy what you see here today, you can go back through our catalog and see some of those because we've had some great conversations just like we're going to have here today. I always forget this, so I put a slide in here. We want this to be an interactive and engaging session, this half-hour show. So please, if you are joining us on Zoom and also on Facebook Live, just type in any questions that you have. And then once we finish up our conversations with our guests, we will then read out your question and give you a little bit of a shout out. So please, please engage with us that way because we want to hear your thoughts also. So this evening, I also want to let you know between 6 and 8 o'clock, we do have the British Columbia Canny Awards. The Canny Awards have been renamed. They were the Startup Canada Awards beforehand. So we'll be celebrating excellence and innovation in entrepreneurship across the province. I'll be involved with this tonight also. Once again, we will include the links to that in chat here today, but you can go to any one of our social media platforms and you can find the link to that also. And next Tuesday, you see we have Lesley Duncan on here. We'll be co-hosting with me, and she's one of our guests today. We'll be talking about this, is we are rebooting our Van Startup Stories events, which we did last year. We did 10 of them, and they were very popular. We've now reimagined that as a virtual event across the country, renamed as Can Startup Stories, and we're going to start with celebrating women entrepreneurs. So we'll be promoting that over the next couple of days, and we hope all of our attendees here today can attend, can be part of that. So our guest today, so we have Jill Earthy. I've known Jill for a couple of years now. She currently is the interim CEO of Women's Enterprise Center of BC. She wears lots of different hats and done many, many things upon her entrepreneurial journey. So Maryam will be speaking with her. But first, Lesley Duncan, who is an entrepreneur in residence with SFU Venture Labs and also with Women's Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub coordinator. I will be talking to Lesley first because she has to jump off at 12:45 because she's got other things she has to do. So she's managed to squeeze us in here today. Did want to mention quickly that we always have our charity organization that we support, which is jack.org, with donations that you can make on Eventbrite for the show. And jack.org is an advocacy group that supports youth mental health awareness. They're doing amazing work across the country. So please support them as we do also. So to start off, I'm not going to talk too much more. So Jill, as I mentioned, is going to talk with Maryam and the work that she's doing with Women Enterprise Center and elsewhere. And with Lesley Duncan, as I mentioned, of course, what she's doing with WEC and also at SFU Venture Labs. All right, I'm now going to stop sharing, and I'm going to turn it over to Maryam very quickly here just to introduce herself, and then I'm going to flip it back and I'm going to have a chat with Lesley.
I'm the founder and CEO of To Resonate, which is an AI driven platform that generates real-time personalized soundscape to help you with your well-being and managing pain and anxiety and stress and ruminating thoughts within 5 minutes to help you with increasing your productivity and focus.
Amazing. Thanks for that, Maryam. So Lesley, let's dive in here. I'm going to go over to speaker view here.
Sounds great.
So Lesley, we've known each other for a little less than a year now with the work that we've been doing hosting live events at SFU Venture Labs, and you have been a fantastic partner with us there. And now that we've moved over to digital platforms, you reached out to us and have really been the one that's helped to spearhead to make next Tuesday's Can Startup Stories event happen. So let's kind of rewind the tape here. Can you introduce yourself and quickly, and then start with SFU Venture Labs, what you do, why you do it, and how things have changed over the last 12 weeks of how you're reimagining that for the entrepreneurs and residents there.
Sure. So as you said, I'm Lesley Duncan. I have come a bit of a roundabout way through academia and then through market research consulting, and then through having my own startup and co-founding to being an entrepreneur in residence or an executive in residence at SFU Venture Labs. And so Venture Labs is part of the SFU Innovates platform, and we focus on the commercialization and scale-up stage companies working in science and technology. So it's an exciting place to be, and especially in since the COVID times. We've had to look at how are we supporting our member companies as they pivot, as they figure out who their markets are, where their markets are, how the problems that they're solving are changing, and how we can support them in doing that. So that early stage was looking at how are we helping them access the programs that are available, how are we advocating for additional funding or support for those that didn't fit in that initial template of let's try and get funding out there and keep companies alive. Some of that marketing help of how are we reaching new audiences in new ways, and then and going forward too in terms of a lot of our companies had been in-house, and so had desk space at Venture Labs. And since that's not a foreseeable back to normal in the next little while, it's how are we continuing to support remotely? How are we helping them build their teams? And how are we helping them carry on and reaching out to new members who sort of like the Can Startup Stories gives us a national platform. We have a little more reach if we're looking at virtual events, if we're looking at virtual training. So how are we reaching and being more inclusive in all of those companies we support who are in that mandate of science, technology, scale up companies?
Got it. So can you provide some examples then, without naming specific companies, of what you had before? I know you were on 2 floors there at SFU Venture Labs. Maybe you can tell us how many companies you had before, and are all of them still engaged and still active, even remotely? And can you share, like I said, without being specific here to name names, but are some flourishing, are some struggling? Perhaps you can kind of talk to that a little bit.
Yes. So we had about 35-ish companies who are sort of our core community members. And then we have some external companies who aren't located in Venture Labs. And we've been supporting all of them. We've still been active. We've been reaching out to all of them. So part of our model is that we have each company is paired with an executive in residence. And so that's their key contact point. And through that person, we figure out what they need, what we can support with, how we help. So we've been really successful with some of our companies who really fit that mandate of the funding that was available in terms of first phase COVID fighting, COVID tracking, the genomic side of things, changes to the healthcare delivery. And so how are those companies who are in that space anyway, able to tweak and pivot just a bit and really focus their offerings on the available funds that were out there, solving those problems that were sort of that first phase that the country was dealing with.
Got it. Got it. So we only have a couple minutes here, but before we jump over to what you're doing with Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, can you let our audience know, the entrepreneurs out there, what is the profile and stage for companies if they're thinking, hey, maybe I should apply to SFU Venture Labs? Can you let them know what stage and kind of what profile you're looking at to encourage people to onboard?
Certainly. So Venture Labs, like I said, is sort of looking at that commercialization and scale up. So ideally, and it's companies that are working in either a deep technology, some sort of healthcare, any of the science and innovation based companies. So less consumer product, less that, more software as a service, any of the hardware products. That's really where we're looking at. You know that you have a product, you know you have product market fit, and now you just need to get from where you're at now to that real sort of scale stage.
Good stuff. And we will, of course, include the link to SFU Venture Labs so people can reach out to you. So let's quickly put your other hat on. Can you tell us, as coordinator with Women's Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, first tell us what they do at a national level and maybe one example of how they've had to reimagine what they've been doing quickly in the last 12 weeks.
Certainly. So Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub is a national initiative. It's based out of Ryerson and the Diversity Institute, and it's really looking at sort of systemic change to understanding why women entrepreneurs are facing challenges, how that differs from men, how we can understand that better, how we can make those changes at sort of a systemic level, and have been really working at creating networks, sharing best practices, and supporting the support organizations. So like Women's Enterprise Center of BC, Forum for Women Entrepreneur in Vancouver, we're really lucky to have a thriving ecosystem that's supporting women entrepreneurs. And so what the goal of WEC is to sort of have a big presence across the country that's coordinated so everybody can share what they're doing, how they're doing it, what works, and really advocate for women entrepreneurs. Wonderful. And so some examples of what's happened sort of since, COVID has started is they've been really in there with government advocating for a need for the fact that women entrepreneurs will require different supports than will fit sort of that traditional template model of companies. So there's a lot of smaller solo entrepreneurs, there's a lot of smaller companies, different service provisions that sort of maybe didn't fit that first round of funding. And so they were really on board for that. They've just released today the Ask Share app, which is a platform for women entrepreneurs to sort of put out in a community of people who want to support women entrepreneurs to be able to say, here's what I need, can you help me with this? And at the same time, organizations and individuals can say, I have this that I can offer you. And so it's trying to match those needs and those haves to really keep women entrepreneurs strong and thriving in this time.
Got it. Well, with those links, please forward those to me afterwards. I'm happy to share those with our team through Startup Vancouver and also Startup Canada to help amplify that signal. One quick question before I turn it over to Maryam to see if there's any questions in chat or if she has any a question for you. Personally, how are you holding up? How are you doing? What have you done over the last 12 weeks to make sure you stay active and upbeat and both mentally and physically?
I was lucky in that before this started, I had been doing some of the at-home fitness apps. So FitOn is the one that I've been using, which has sort of been quick workouts that you can fit in anytime, and you can do those 20 minutes. So if you need that, break up of the day, so you're not just sitting at your desk all day, those have been really helpful. In addition to, actually, now that the weather's good, getting out and hiking. I'm a big fan of the outdoors. I've got a dog who we go hiking, and when she's having a good day, it's hard for me to not have a good day. So it's been really helpful to be able to get out and exercise. I think has been one of my major ways of staying sane. Got
it. Good stuff. I know we have one more minute. I know you have to leave very soon here. So I'm going to turn it over quickly to Maryam to see if there's any questions in chat, or Maryam, perhaps you had a question for Lesley.
Question in the chat, but I was wondering that what is the percentage of roughly master's and PhD students who are working on their research at the SFU, that they transition into the SFU Venture Lab to bring their research and ideas to life?
I don't actually know the percentage on that, but what's really great about SFU is that they have a channel set up for that. So the first phase is SFU, what's called Venture Coast Capital Savings Venture Connection is the idea phase innovation support. And so that's sort of, if you're looking at, I have an idea of something that might fit or might be a business, and can you help me develop that and look at a business model, look at product market fit. And so Venture Connections is a really great first phase mentorship driven program that allows SFU students to do that. And then if they are fit to the science and technology side, then they could graduate into VentureLabs. And SFU also has Radius, which is the social impact and social innovation support incubator. And so they're also another great opportunity for SFU students, faculty, community members to bring an idea to life. And in that one, it's focused on, you know, what's the broader impact that you're having with your business? How are you supporting society more broadly?
Good stuff. Good stuff. Now I know you have to go, Lesley, so I will liberate you now. Thank you so much for joining us today. And
thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, you take care. Have a great day. And I'm going to turn it over to Maryam to have a chat with Jill Earthy.
Sounds great.
Hi. Hi, Jill, it's a pleasure to be speaking to you today. And you have spoken to this sense of being unsatisfied at certain points in your life, which were actually a pivotal point that drove you to wanting more out of your life. And it's incredible to see how in tune you are to your mind and body. And I see many people who struggle and stay in a role that doesn't serve them and constantly complain about where they are in their lives, but unable to create that shift. So my question is, what are some examples of conscious moves to be able to create this different paths and not to stay in the same role for a long time?
Great question. I mean, I've been so fortunate in my career. There's definitely been a consistent theme, and that's my passion for supporting women entrepreneurs. And I think early in my career too, I knew that I didn't want to work in a large corporation. Like, I knew that I wanted to be in a smaller organization where we're going to have more immediate impact and have a variety of tasks to do. So I started my career working with entrepreneurs, started my first business at the age of 26, and was able to then take that passion and go into leadership roles and that experience and take on leadership roles, you know, starting with the Forum for Women Entrepreneurs, and, you know, then became interested in the investment side of things, right? And then front funder and different funding models, and it's all kind of connected, but at the core, it's all about supporting women entrepreneurs. And I think if you identify where your passion lies and how you want to contribute and your strengths, it's hard, it's not easy, but then kind of leaning into that, right? And sometimes it's about asking people around you too, right? One of the reasons I've made career changes is when people say, you know, when I start talking about something, I'm like, wow, you're really lighting up around this, right? And it's almost like taking other people who know you to reflect back to you what's important to you.
Trying to reverse engineer it and see what is it that you're doing that you know at what point it's time to, okay, it's time for me to leave this job now, or it's time for me to move on to the next thing. So that's great. And also 7 years ago, you spoke to how traditional work environments is no longer working. So you called it, you know, and right now, this is where we're, you know, seeing the effects of COVID on the way that people work. So what do you envision the future of work is going to look like?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people were predicting that over time, right? I mean, this is just expediting the shift, the situation that we're currently in. And I think it's a combination of things, right? We look at technology and the innovations that enable us to work from home and connect with others in a different way, but still an effective way. We also look at just people's needs are adapting, right? And that recognition that it doesn't have to be one way. It doesn't have to be the way it used to be, that 9 to 5. And that there are new opportunities. And then you see the increase in entrepreneurs, right? Which is what we're all here about, who are creating new models, are challenging the status quo and saying, hey, we don't have to do that anymore. That, and as well as the next generation too. They're also saying, hey, can we do this a different way? So I think it's all of those factors that are contributing to us, you know, looking at how we work. And everybody works differently, right? Some people are night owls and are very productive late at night. Others are early birds and are super productive in the morning. So recognizing that and leveraging people's strengths, which benefits everyone.
But right now, you know, since for the past couple of months, we've been working from home. Do you foresee that, you know, companies going to realize that the people have been more productive actually working from home versus actually going to the office?
Well, that's what the data is starting to show, right? There are a number of reports that have come out from the last 3 months that are showing that people are generally more productive because they don't have that commute time and they can kind of adapt their hours that work for them. It doesn't work for everybody. I think that's the other key thing is we have to be really clear. It's great for some jobs. It's not great for all. But I think, yeah, I think we're never going back, right, to the way it was. We're seeing businesses like Shopify here in Canada, right, declaring that, you know, that their default is now people working from home. So I think different companies will adapt in different ways. I know for us at Women's Enterprise Center, we have 3 offices around the province. As businesses are starting to reopen this month, you know, we've put a full plan in place. So if employees do want to return to the office, they certainly can. But of course, the majority don't. And we have had no concerns with productivity. So we're very flexible and adaptable to that.
I wanted to ask more about what you're doing right now. And if you could share with us, what funding resources do you recommend for female entrepreneurs?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've been honored after serving 8 years on the board of directors of Women's Enterprise Center that I stepped in as interim CEO. Not really in mid-March. Of course, that had been, I decided on that, or I've been asked to step in January when things are very different. So it's been an interesting 2.5 months. But it's amazing to be able to, you know, dive deep into the work to support women entrepreneurs. And we do have a loan program at Women's Enterprise Centers. So we offer loans of up to $150,000. But most importantly, wrapped around that is mentorship support, education and training, business advisory services. So when you think about funding, and right now in particular, right, as businesses are really looking at what are the options that are available, how do I adapt and pivot my business? Where is it going to go? And there's sort of that short-term, mid-term, and longer-term vision. And a lot of the programs coming out are loans, and that's good for some companies. It's not great for others. And so I always say to entrepreneurs is really understanding, you know, why do you need money? How are you going to use it? Really looking ahead, mapping out that plan, and looking at all the options. And particularly women entrepreneurs tend to look at things holistically, right? So are there, you know, look at the debt options, look at the equity options, and who are the potential investors you want to bring on board? Are there, you know, sometimes there are grants, and one of the things that has come out of this COVID situation is there are some new funding sources, new loan products, and some more innovative initiatives.
Why do you recommend, for example, during, you know, people who are working on their startup, entrepreneurs working on their startup, whether to pursue crowdfunding or the, you know, front funder? What are the pros and cons of, let's just say, going to, for example, doing an Indiegogo campaign or a Kickstarter campaign versus like doing, you know, front funder, and what are the benefits? So you've been involved with front funder. Just wanted to learn more about that, and at one point you encourage entrepreneurs to join into their program.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always, again, starting like what is it that you need, and then identifying, and I always talk about the funding puzzle, right? It's kind of putting all the pieces together. And I think it's also important to, you don't have to go one path or another, right? You can do, so in the case of sort of crowdfunding, which has become a newer thing in the last 5 years in particular, there's the reward-based crowdfunding, like the ones that you mentioned, like Fundraiser and Indiegogo and Kickstarter, where are fantastic for product-based companies, right? To test a product, to validate if there's interest, and to get some revenue in to be able to produce that product. The next level, of course, there's equity crowdfunding, which is a front funder, of course, is a regulated platform. And I think not everybody recognizes that. There's deep due diligence that each of the companies have to go through. And then on the investor side too, it opens it up to a broader community of investors. It's not just that 1% anymore that can actually participate as investors, but it's regulated. So there are provisions in place to mitigate risk on both sides and to educate. And that's a really great resource. Like there's a local company right now, Bucha Brew, Kara, who is doing a second fundraising round on Front Funder. And it's amazing because she's able to engage her community, raise some funds. So this is a longer conversation because there's lots of pros and cons to both. And it's really important to understand all of them including taking on a loan, including bringing on external investors and making sure your values are aligned with them. So that's an hour-long conversation, but always love talking about all the different options and how they fit together.
Campaign in the chat if anyone wants to have a look. They've done a great job.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, what book do you recommend for female entrepreneurs who are
So
pursuing their
many.
dream? Yeah.
Yes. Well, and right now too, I mean, there's a lot of educating they all need to do on so many different things. But you look at Dare to Lead with Brene Brown is a really great one. One book that I tend to go back to is called The Messy Middle. The author is Scott Belsky, and that's really about it's somewhat easy to start a business, but it's that messy middle, right? And a lot of entrepreneurs right now are in that messy middle where you're just evaluating everything and what are the paths forward and what are the options. So I find that that's a good read too.
About talking about our leadership, and we're seeing that some of the leaders of the world right now are not doing such a great job, and wondering what qualities do you look for, and has it changed?
I think there's always been leaders. I think there are more opportunities recently for some of the leaders to step up when you look at, and particularly with female leaders. You look at New Zealand, you look at Taiwan. There's some incredible leaders doing amazing things. And the commonality is the authenticity, right? The compassion, the empathy, the being themselves and calling things out. I think it's really about, leadership is also about being uncomfortable, but to advocate for a greater good. So speaking up, we're seeing that more right now too, which is so important, how we each have to use our own voices, but it has to be our own voice and it has to be authentic. And I think that, if we focus on that, the world would be a much better place.
Agree more, being empathetic, being more conscious, and just be
and
real.
Open.
And
being
open.
real and listening, right? And understanding.
Listening.
Yes.
Definitely. I have, let's see, Colin, do you have any questions in the chat for us, or should I just keep going with my questions?
It's been interesting. Last show, chat was just lighting up. Everybody, we had to extend offline the show by about 15 minutes. Everybody's very shy today here. We've got, I see people, I got to call you out. I see Dave Brown is joining us today. I know Dave, he was one of our guests last week. Dave, you got any questions for Jill here? Not to put you on the spot, but I just put you on the spot there. But I'll be monitoring that. I know we've only got a couple of minutes left here, but Maryam, if you've got one more question before we wrap up here for Jill, go for it.
Wondering how you're coping with, if there has been any sort of anxiety or uncertainty that has come up around this time. What do you have any habits that you could tell us, like healthy habits that you do every day that keeps you anchored?
We're all going through different things right now, particularly. Right? I love the analogy right now of that we're all in the same storm, but we're all in very different boats. And I think that holds true in so many different ways, right? Coming at this from different experiences and different situations, some with jobs, some without, some with businesses that are thriving, some that are struggling. And I know for me, so I'm at home with two teenagers, two daughters, 13 and 15, and I'm grateful that they're fairly self-sufficient. But what I've been doing to keep sane is I've been going for early morning walks with a podcast. So I'll go out, some days it's 20 minutes, that's all I have time for, some days it's 45, and I find that fresh air, and then I come back and then I get ready for the day, and that helps to provide a bit of a transition point as well.
You as well, and I'm curious what podcast you listen to.
It varies. For quite a while I was listening to The Daily or the New York Times. Then I was finding that I couldn't listen to it anymore. It wasn't providing me with that inspiration that I needed in the morning. It's well done, but and sometimes I listen to Brene Brown's new podcast. Sometimes I listen. I'm on the board of the Forum for Women Entrepreneurs as well, and they have a go-to podcast. Sometimes I listen to that. So it's a range of things depending on my mood. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well, we are at the top of the hour. So I know Jill well enough also, we can talk for another hour, maybe 2, maybe 3, but we like to be respectful of Jill's time and also for all of our attendees today. And thank you everybody for joining us. So I'll start by wrapping it up and then let Maryam finish up here today. So I am not going to be singing my song because we didn't get any donations. I don't mean to punish people by not having the opportunity to hear my voice, or maybe that is punishment. I don't know. I'll let you decide. But we will just wrap that up with jack.org. Once again, the great organization. We love to support them, and we'll continue to do this as we go. I did include in chat just a link to Navigating the Messy Middle with Scott Belsky. So we do have a YouTube video on there, and also the link to the book, as Jill had mentioned there. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. Jill, I want to thank you, and also for Lesley earlier. And Maryam, why don't you quickly wrap it up for today for us?
One quick question. Is that okay?
You know what? There's no if we go over to 2 minutes, we can do whatever we want. So go for it.
Do you have 2 minutes, if you don't mind?
Sure.
Okay. Dave is wondering, he would love to hear you suggest, one main change we're facing on the funding front overall, specifically regarding private investment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it's an excellent question. And right now we are seeing obviously a little bit of a dip, certainly in individuals, so angel investors have stalled a little bit over the last couple of months, and a little bit of venture capital too. But I think it's really around people just pivoting, right? Just reevaluating where they're at. I'm an optimist. I think we're going to start to see that pick up again soon. And already when you look at CBCA and some of the others, so the Canadian Venture Capital Association and the National Angel Capital Association, they're starting to report that we'll start to see a little bit of a pickup soon. So stay strong, but it's a great time to start engaging in those conversations and telling investors what you're doing with your business.
Good answer. So thank you so much, everyone, and for joining us today. And thank you, Colin, and thank you, Jill, and really appreciate your presence here. And for everyone who's tuning in, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll be posting and sharing this soon, and all the links will be available there as well. So thank you, and see you on Tuesday.
Great, Jill. Thanks so much. Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.